indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Please turn your cell phones to off or vibrate. Individuals making presentations are asked to adjust the microphones as needed. And now, there we go. First order of business is the approval of the agenda, and we have an amendment proposed. It would be listed as item C under business, water purchase authorization with Camp Lejeune.
Motion to amend the agenda
And to approve it.
and approve it as amended.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Need an approval of the items on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed, none. Motion carries. First order of business is a public hearing for the fiscal year 21-22 ONWASA budget. In accordance with North Carolina General Statutes, Chapter 159-12 and 162-9, the ONWASA Board of Directors shall hold a public hearing on the proposed budget prior to its adoption. All required notices have been given. Citizens have an opportunity to address the board for no more than 3 minutes per speaker on the topic of the proposed budget. I will open the meeting up for the public hearing. Ms. Spriggs, you're going to give an overview of the changes in the budget?
Good evening, everyone. The 6 changes made since the first presentation to the board were either mandated, requested by the board, or a needed increase to purchase water from other utilities. The first change was to move a $55,000 sewer project from the operations budget to the capital project budget. The second change was to add $55,000 from fund balance to the capital budget to cover the sewer project. The third change was an increase in water system development fees of $142,416 based on the actual revenues received to date. The fourth change added $39,757,000 to pay for the mandated North Carolina state retirement increase. The fifth change added $78,830 to pay for the 1% COLA for all employees. And the last change was to increase the budget to purchase water from other governments up to $228,830 due to the shutdown of Dixon Wells 10 and 11.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to comment on the proposed budget? Do we have anybody? Seeing no one in attendance to speak on the budget, we will have a move to discussion. We'll close the public hearing, and we'll move to discussion of the proposed budget. Presenting will be Mr. Hudson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The proposed 21-22 budget has been produced in accordance with all applicable laws. The Board of Directors received the FY22 ONWASA budget. There have been no comments received from members of the public, either not only this evening, but also by email or phone call or in written form. We've not received any comments about the budget. If the board is satisfied with the amended budget proposal, the board may now legally consider adopting the budget at any time. The board, if you so desire, may look at the budget as a possible adoption at this time, or give further direction to staff on other changes that you would like to see made in the budget. It's completely at the discretion of the board, Mr. Chairman. One note, the increased budget to purchase water from other governments to $228,830, we do believe that is going to be necessary, and in fact, we're putting things into place to be able to supplement our water production since D10 and D11 are not online right now. So we do view that as a very important part of the budget. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay. Directors, what's your pleasure? To adopt the budget this evening or to set a date in the near future to adopt it?
Motion to approve the budget as presented.
Moved and second to approve the ONWASA budget ordinance for fiscal year 2021, 2022, along with the proposed rate schedule as presented. I hear a motion? I do have a motion already, don't I? Any further discussion? Welcome, Paul.
Sorry for my tardiness.
We're now ready to vote on the motion to adopt the budget. All those in favor of adopting the budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted. Item B, Disaster Response Emergency Construction Service Contracts for 2021. Presenting Mr. David Moore.
Board of Directors, good evening. The item before you this evening consists of a pair of construction contracts that will be used for the completion of emergency repairs to ONWASA's water and wastewater infrastructure in the aftermath of a natural disaster or other catastrophic event. As described in tonight's agenda, these contracts establish either unit or lump sum pricing for the types of work most likely to be required following a major storm event. This includes piping and pumping station repairs, replacement of temporary fill, and installation of isolation valves. All work is to be performed on an as-needed basis, with contract activation determined solely by ONWASA, and the two contracts are being awarded, the contracts being primary and secondary, to provide redundancy or in the event there's more work than one contractor can address. Each contract has a maximum value of $500,000. However, the actual amount to be spent during the 2-year duration will be determined by the number of times the contract is activated and the amount of work is assigned. These contracts will replace 2 existing contracts that were awarded in 2019 for this purpose, but which are now expiring. Neither contract was ever activated, nor do we wish in the situation or be in the situation to do that. We'd prefer not to use these contracts, but having 2 firms on call within 24 hours for response and having costs pre-negotiated greatly enhances our ability to restore service quickly if we're really hit. I would also note that each contract includes compliance with certain federal contracting requirements. As the work completed will probably be considered eligible for FEMA reimbursement. We want to have that paperwork ready at the time. So, AC Schultes of Carolina Incorporated is the primary contractor and state utility contractors was the secondary. They provided the lowest responsive and responsible bids for the project at a March 10th, 2021 bid opening, and I'm recommending acceptance of the low bids and award of contracts to these firms. They were actually the 2 firms that won the contracts in 2019 as well. Tonight, the action requested is to consider a motion to proceed with the 2 disaster response emergency construction services contracts in the amount of $500,000 per contract, with AC Schultes of Carolina Incorporated as primary contractor, and State Utility Contractors Incorporated as secondary contractor, and to authorize the Chief Executive Officer to execute these contracts and any additional documents as required in connection with this action. Thank you for your attention to this request. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Now, these contracts, they're not for a lump sum of $500,000 per contract. It's for work up unto that limit, right?
Yep, Chairman, we actually, they bid on like 40 different items. We had them bid on, say, replacing a water line 0 to 5 feet deep, 5 to 10, that kind of thing, and they set a unit price for each. So if we have a storm and we need them to fix something, we'll basically tell them to go out and do that particular item for that amount. The 2 contracts we had, we didn't ever call them out. So basically we're closing out the contracts. We're reimbursing the contractors the cost of their bonds and insurance. They had to hold bonds and insurance for 2 years, which was less than $20,000 a contract. And they basically, then they're closed out. So we just had to put a ceiling on it. FEMA, one of the things when we talked with FEMA about it is it has to have a ceiling. It can't be just an open-ended spend whatever you want.
So all the individual work will be done under a work order authorized by
Yeah,
the director?
We would actually activate the contract between the CEO and myself would determine what items need to be repaired, and then activate either the primary or secondary contractor to do it.
Okay. Any other questions?
Motion to proceed. Second.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the two disaster emergency construction service contracts. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted.
Thank you.
Item C is the water purchase agreement with Camp Lejeune. Mr. Hudson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I appreciate the board's flexibility in considering this additional item this evening. By way of background, you have, I'd like to just go ahead and draw your attention to this at your seat right now. You have this information before you. This is the North Carolina drought update for the assessment period ending on May 18th, 2021. And right now, Onslow County is mainly in a moderate drought condition with some portions of the county that are abnormally dry. So the next 7-day forecast, this is the latest information we have from the website, is going to be fairly dry with higher temperatures. Now, although we do not get our drinking water from rain, rainfall influences behavior dramatically. And so what we do have is people have started trying to save their plantings and their yards. And so we do have higher rates of irrigation, which increases water demand. There's actually and Mr. Seth Brown and our staff has done some, and his team has done some pretty good work on this. There's actually a great correlation between when rain clouds come into Onslow County and when water demand goes up and down. So we have a situation where we are facing a drought. We also have a situation where we have a holiday weekend coming up. And we also have a situation where we have Dixon 10 and Dixon 11 that are currently unable to pump. And that's the loss of raw water in the amount of 1.9 million gallons per day. And the board's been fully briefed on all of that for the benefit of the public. Dixon 10 and Dixon 11 are two high production wells, and they are located in the Holly Ridge area, and we currently have them offline right now due to just out of an abundance of caution, really, because there's been a PFAS release that was identified by the Department of the Navy aboard Marine Corps Outlying Landing Field Camp Davis South. Now, good news for the board is that this month, the Navy is proceeding at their own expense to sink several sentinel or monitoring wells, and we've been informed that we will have water samples that have been tested for the PFAS compound or chemical by June. So in June, we will have sampling of the aquifer in that region kind of surrounding the area of PFAS release to give us some more reassurance that PFAS has not entered the aquifer from which we draw our drinking water in wells D10 and D11. So if those sentinel wells come back clean, then we'll be able to go to one of our consultants, Dr. Richard Spruill, and Dr. Spruill is planning on giving us some type of pumping plan that would prevent us from drawing any contaminants closer to D10 and D11. And we would need to follow the advice of those hydrogeologists in that regard. So even at the end of this, members of the board, I can't tell you that we will go back to 1.9 million gallons per day, because 1.9 million gallons is kind of dependent on the rate of pumping and the time you're pumping, the gallons per minute and how many minutes you pump. So I don't know where we'll end up, but I do know that right now we don't have D10 and D11 accessible to us. Now, we have had an agreement, an intergovernmental service agreement with the base to sell water to the base for many years. And we actually have a connection point, not at main side, Camp Lejeune, but at Marine Corps Air Station New River. And that that existing connection is viable and we would be able to buy water from the air station. So there are no water quality concerns that we have whatsoever with buying water from the air station. And the air station and the Public Works Department aboard the base indicates that they could sell us up to 1 million gallons per day. Now that 1 million gallons per day is not only getting the water, but it's also where you get the water. So if we were getting 1 million gallons per day, say in Swansboro, where we don't necessarily need 1 million gallons per day extra, it's not as helpful. But this connection is in the southwest Onslow area of the community, which is pretty close to the Dixon area, to Verona, and that southwest, which is a high demand area. And we have registered very high demand with falling tank levels there in past droughts and summer seasons. So we actually believe that being able to get up to 1 million gallons per day at that location would be beneficial to the system. Well, I had hoped that we would have the language of the IGSA for the board shortly. It's not come in yet. And we have Memorial Day happening between tonight and the next meeting of our board. Entering an intergovernmental service agreement is not within my authority. This is a board action that must take place. So what I would ask the board to consider, although we don't have the exact language of the IGSA, would be a motion to authorize me to sign an intergovernmental service agreement modification. It's a modification of an existing agreement that we already have for the purchase of water from the base connection at the New River Air Station, and that would be up to 1 million gallons per day at a rate not to exceed ONWASA's own current rate. So we know that the base has two rates. They have an activity rate, which is basically a military activity that is using water, and they have a private rate. So their rate and fee schedule does not actually match up to what ours is, because we have a retail rate and we have a bulk rate, which is kind of like a wholesale rate. The base's rate and fee schedule doesn't say bulk or wholesale, it just says private. But as of this point in time, their private rate is lower than our own bulk rate. So we believe that's a reasonable cost for the purchase of water. As a side note, we will be capturing how much we spend on any purchase of water during the period of time that we do not have D10 and D11 operable. I don't know that there would be any relief to ONWASA for the expense of purchasing additional water while D10 and D11 are not operable, but I would just like to have the data. And so we can ask Ms. Griggs to please just keep all those invoices, and hopefully one day good things will happen. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, if you would consider a motion to authorize me to sign an IGSA for the purchase of water from the base connection at New River Air Station up to 1 million gallons per day at a rate not to exceed ONWASA's own current rate, that would be something that I would recommend.
Mr. Kitchen, you're comfortable with our procedures?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I don't think this is an additional delegation of authority to the CEO. It really is not a problem.
You heard the motion?
Motion to approve as presented.
The
Second.
motion, second. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted.
I got thinking about it. That's only 1 million gallons. It doesn't replace the 1.9. Are you concerned about the shortfall?
Director Warden, that's a good question. Tonight, during the consent agenda, there was also an agreement reached with the town of Surf City, and that could provide an additional 100, 200,000 gallons per day, depending on whether or not we need to open that connection up. There's a difference in the water that we would receive from the air station and Surf City. The method of, I guess you might say, decontamination is different for Surf City. It's different than our own water, but the composition of the New River Air Station water is very similar to our own water. So actually, we do not believe if we open up the valve at the air station, we don't believe that our own ONWASA customers would ever notice a difference. Probably the customers in Topsail would not notice a difference either. I mean, you know, you'd have to be fairly discerning to get the difference between drinking waters perhaps, but we're not quite ready to open up the connection to Surf City yet. There are some other things that we are looking at doing. We might change the pumping times and run rates. More than anything, I'm hoping that the Sentinel wells come back clean and that Dr. Spruill is able to let us restart at least one of our 2 wells. If we were at 1.9 million gallons previously and we're able to pump some amount from the air station and turn on at least one of our wells at 500,000 gallons a day or whatever, we will be in better shape than we were last year.
Any other comments? All right. Moving to public comment. Anyone in attendance wishing to address the board on any subject? We have anybody signed up? Seeing no one, we'll move on to Chief Executive Officer's comments. Back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I have 2 items this evening. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your diligence in looking at the budget and the proposal therein. And along with that, we have members of our finance team here this evening. And in fact, all the staff members that are here worked on the budget in their respective areas. Ms. Riggs, our finance officer, Robin and Dawn, all worked in finance pretty hard on this year. And of course, everybody else in the audience as well. Mr. Moore with his areas and Mr. Bergman reviewing IT requests, Ms. Geist taking a look at things, including the mandated change to our retirement program. So all of these had to come together. I'd like to commend them for their very good work. You have very good public servants working for you in those departments, directors. So I want to mention that. Secondly, kind of along the lines of this sheet about the drought, I've talked with our treatment facilities administrator, Mr. Seth Brown, who's in the room this evening, and he has informed me that we do have more than 50% of our groundwater sources pumping for more than 12 hours in a 24-hour period at this time. And that is a threshold for stage 1 water shortage condition. Now that would allow us to request voluntary water conservation measures, such as limiting car washing to once per week, voluntarily limit lawn and garden watering, don't wash down outside areas such as sidewalks, patios, parking lots, service bays, aprons, don't leave faucets running, things like that. Just common sense measures on how to conserve water. We're going to continue to monitor this through the upcoming weekend, but if pumping conditions continue, directors, next week, I might be requesting that the public voluntarily limit some of their less pressing water consumption. We want you to have water and to use it wisely, but we're also looking at another drought situation. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Board of Directors' comments? Tim?
I appreciate the work on the budget, and have a great evening.
Okay. Royce?
Thank you. Good night.
I don't know how to top that.
Mayor?
I just want to thank everybody for their work on the budget as well. And I think I can solve the water shortage because I'll ask my son to stop watering his garden in Verona. So I'll fix it. Thank you.
Same as everyone, thank you so much for the work on the budget. It really takes a team to put this together. Thank you.
Bob?
I'll echo those same comments. Even though I'm new to the board, being involved in budgets for the city, it is a team effort, and you're to be commended for getting together and providing us what I hope is a fine budget. So, thank you.
I'll echo those comments on the budget. Very efficient, very effective, and I think we've got a good budget that stays within the realm of frugality and yet takes care of our needs for the future. I would like to compliment Jeff and his staff on handling of the matter of wells 10 and 11 Dixon, and also the cooperation we've received from the base. The memos you send in terms of giving us a thorough understanding of the issues involved and the Centennial wells being approved and soon to be installed, I guess. I feel that your emails convey a tone of optimism that the results of those tests are going to indicate that we will be able to pump 10 and 11 again. And I think a lot of that is attributable to the efforts you've put forth in meeting with the base and also their ability to extend as much cooperation as they have. So kudos for you and your staff for handling this situation in the most expedient manner. Anything else to be brought before the board?
I have one question. Do you think that the base will undertake any remediation of the PFAS and underneath that they can do? Or will they pump it up and try to treat it and then discharge the good stuff back down as typical? Have you gotten any indication?
Director, in at least one of the meetings I've been in with the base, the subject of remediation did come up, and the way it was answered was the federal government has a very specific methodology as to how to approach this. The very first thing that they do is look at private wells and whether or not that situation needs to be remediated if off-base wells have been affected. As it turns out, they did do sampling off-base, and to my knowledge, none of the off-base private wells have shown any indication. It was all non-detect for the things that were tested. And so in the meeting I was in about that, when remediation was brought up, they said, we're taking this in order, and the first thing we're doing is this. We're not talking about that yet. We have to take it in order. I would believe, based on what's been done in other areas of the country, that is something that they would look at, especially since we've got 2 high production wells within a mile of that location.
Certainly hope so. They've been pretty cooperative, I think, in regards to being good stewards of water resources, as you're aware. So I'm hoping they'll continue to do so.
Yes, sir.
You are exactly right. I had the experience of going through a water contamination issue in a municipality in New Jersey, and we were sort of the guinea pigs. And you're right, the EPA, the final result was they had surveyed all the people in the water contamination area, and they had found contamination on private wells. They ordered the offending industries to bring public water supply to them, and also funded the construction of water filtration facilities so we could bring one of our main pumping wells back online. So the protocol's been set in terms of previous experiences with municipal governments. So you're on the right track. Anything else? Hearing none, we almost set a record tonight, but not quite, 6:28, so look for a motion to adjourn.
You got it.
Okay, we're adjourned.